Prepare to laugh out loud. How Pete Davidson turned Brooklyn's quietest park into a small-scale, airspace chaos with his new drone. What do you think happened when horses and yoga groups got involved? Nobody in Brooklyn's bustling Prospect Park expected a lazy weekend afternoon to turn into a live-action comedy of errors, starring none other than Pete Davidson and his ill-fated drone. On a bright, breezy day, parents picnicked under the shade of broad oaks, joggers loped by with earphones blaring, and kids sprawled on blankets, slurping melting ice pops. Into this tranquil mix sauntered Pete, baseball cap tugged low, a slight grin on his face, and a brand-new high-tech drone tucked under his arm. He'd purchased the sleek black gadget on impulse just a night before, caught by some mesmerizing late-night infomercial. Easy to fly, the commercial had boasted. Intuitive controls. Pete, never one for reading instructions thoroughly, figured it'd be no more complex than a video game. He ambled over to a relatively open patch of grass near the dog run, popped open the drone's box, and studied the mass of blinking lights and tiny propellers. "All right, buddy," he muttered. "Show me what you got." He tapped the remote's launch button. The device lifted gently at first, whirring in a stable hover. Pete's eyebrows rose, impressed. "Okay, we're off to a good start." A few passers-by paused to watch, curiosity piqued. What Pete didn't notice was a massive tree limb overhead. As he steered the drone forward with an enthusiastic flick of the joystick, it shot up and nearly clipped the branch, forcing Pete into a hasty control shift. The drone pitched sideways, zipping unexpectedly toward a teenage soccer practice. The kids squealed and scattered, the ball abandoned in the center of the field. Pete grimaced, heart pounding. "Yo, sorry," he shouted, wrestling with the controller. The drone dipped down mere inches above the grass, then swung past a group of dog owners chatting around a bench. One golden retriever lunged at the drone with a playful bark, missing it by a whisker, while the dog's owner gasped. Half the dog run watchers whipped out their phones, capturing the unfolding chaos. Some recognized Pete instantly. His face was hardly inconspicuous. "Is that Pete Davidson?" someone whispered, already filming. "Dude, he's about to cause a meltdown." Pete, none the wiser, twisted the remote again, trying to steer the drone away from the dogs. But it veered up and over the crowd, then straight toward a row of yoga enthusiasts practicing sun salutations near a tranquil pond. More shrieks erupted. Yoga mats flapped, water bottles toppled, and at least one poor yogi ended up tumbling out of a warrior pose with a surprised yelp. "Oh man, I didn't sign up for this," Pete muttered, sweating bullets. He jammed the joystick to the left, hoping to clear the yoga group. Instead, the drone soared dangerously close to the park's mounted police patrol. One officer, perched atop a large bay horse, visibly braced as the rotors whined too near the animal's ears. The horse whinnied, danced sideways, and the officer struggled to maintain control. People scrambled back from the spooked horse, parents pulling kids away from the potential danger. Pete's insides twisted. Come on," he hissed at the remote, hitting what he hoped was the kill switch. The drone decided to do its own thing, lurching upward once more before abruptly losing power. Gravity took hold, and with a final sputtering whine, it plummeted into a trash receptacle near a rose garden. A resonant clang echoed through the park, punctuated by collective gasps. Silence, then a flurry of angry voices. A father who'd been enjoying an ice cream with his toddler shook his head in disbelief. A dog walker marched up, scowling, while the yoga class glared from a distance. Pete, face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and relief that no one was physically harmed, dashed over to the trash can. The drone's rotors were bent, its camera lens cracked. He muttered an expletive under his breath, then looked up to see the policeman on the horse, leading the jittery animal forward. "Sir," the officer said, voice stern as he reined in the horse, "I'm going to need you to step away from that device and show me some ID." Pete set the broken drone down with a sigh. "Yeah, of course, man, officer," he corrected, digging into his pocket for his wallet. Around them, a crowd formed, phones raised, the whispering and giggling intensifying as they realized the culprit was, in fact, Pete Davidson. The policeman studied Pete's ID, expression torn between annoyance and the recognition of a public figure. "Mr. Davidson, do you have a permit for operating that drone here?" Pete rubbed the back of his neck, a sheepish grin creeping across his face. "I, guess not. Didn't know I needed one, to be honest. I just bought this thing last night. I thought the park was, open skies or something." "Open skies doesn't mean no regulations," the officer retorted, unimpressed. "We got families here, and you nearly caused a riot. I'm going to have to write you up for unauthorized drone operation. Possibly reckless endangerment too, since you spooked a police horse and nearly collided with civilians. A few of the onlookers tisked disapprovingly, though a good chunk seemed more entertained than outraged, filming Pete's every move. One teen loudly joked, "Hey Pete, next time just do a stand-up routine, man. Safer for all of us." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Pete exhaled. He scanned the group around him, yoga folks still collecting scattered mats, a soccer coach comforting startled kids, the hot dog guy scowling with his cart slightly toppled, and realized he'd messed up royally. "Listen," he began, raising his voice. "I'm really sorry. That was all me, no excuses. I wanted to try something new, and I guess I dove in without thinking. I'll pay for any damage, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Camera shutters clicked. A mother called out, "You freaked out my daughter." The little girl behind her, eyes wide, gave Pete a hesitant wave. Pete tried a small, apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, kiddo. Didn't mean to scare you." The policeman finished writing the citation. "Here's your ticket. You're also banned from drone flying in city parks without a proper permit, understood? And if there's any civil claims for damages, you'll have to deal with those separately." Pete took the ticket, mouth twisting into a half-grimace, half-nod. "Understood," he murmured. Word traveled at lightning speed, partly due to the many phone recordings. That evening, clips of the meltdown dominated social media, featuring Pete's frantic attempts to wrangle the rogue drone, the outraged shouts, and the sheepish apology. Hashtags like #PeteParkCrash and #DroneDavidson soared up trending lists. Late-night talk show hosts teased him. Pete Davidson took flight attempts to a new level and crashed them. Meme makers turned the fiasco into comedic gold. One popular meme showed Pete's face superimposed on a fighter pilot's body, labeled "Top Drone," Maverick's worst nightmare. Pete responded in typical comedic style, posting a brief video on Instagram. Surrounded by drone pieces, he held them up like a defeated trophy. "So, in case you haven't heard, I bombed at the park, literally. Apologies to everyone at Prospect who thought they were extras in a dystopian sci-fi flick. Lesson learned, don't skip reading the manual, kids." The post quickly gathered supportive comments and thousands of likes, with fans commending him for owning up to his mistake. Local news outlets interviewed some of the park goers. The soccer coach shrugged. Honestly, the kids found it hilarious once the shock wore off, like they had a random cameo in a real-life comedy show. The yoga instructor admitted she was annoyed at first, but appreciated Pete's prompt apology and gesture of paying for a new mat for one participant whose mat got wrecked. Even the policeman's official statement was somewhat lenient, focusing on reminding the public about the city's drone regulations and praising Pete for cooperating with authorities. Still, it was an expensive lesson for Pete. In addition to the citation fee, he voluntarily covered the cost of a replacement lunch for a startled picnic couple, offered to fix a toppled hot dog cart, and donated to a local equine therapy program to make amends for spooking the police horse. "Hey, if I'm going to cause trouble, at least let me help fix it," he quipped in a follow-up tweet, garnering praise for turning a fiasco into a philanthropic gesture. A few days later, a drone club from Queens reached out to Pete, inviting him to a designated drone flying field where they could teach him the ropes in a controlled environment. "We promise we won't let you terrorize the city," they teased. Intrigued, Pete accepted. Soon after, he posted a short vlog titled Drone 2.0. Pete learns not to destroy the neighborhood, showing him practicing safe flight maneuvers. The video concluded with him successfully landing the drone and exclaiming, "See? No one got hurt, no horses freaked out. Progress, baby." The fiasco, comedic as it was, overshadowed the typical hum of a Brooklyn afternoon for a while. People in the area traded stories about nearly being buzzed by Pete's flying contraption, and the city council briefly debated stricter guidelines for drone use in public parks. But ultimately, the meltdown also underscored a surprisingly positive lesson: that celebrities, like anyone else, can stumble into trouble, but accountability and a genuine apology can go a long way toward making things right. In an interview weeks later, Pete recounted the day with a sheepish grin. "I mean, it's up there in my Hall of Fame of dumb decisions, but I gotta say, folks in Brooklyn were chill about it. Once they realized I wasn't, intentionally tormenting them, they cut me some slack. And I guess the moral is, check the local laws, read the drone manual, and maybe hold off on fancy flying stunts if you don't know what you're doing." The meltdown ended up overshadowing a dozen other local news bits that day, yet ironically, it also overshadowed the comedic meltdown narrative itself. turning into a story of learning curves, personal responsibility, and the comedic blend of error and humility that defines Pete Davidson. And in the end, he emerged from the fiasco with a bit more knowledge, a lighter wallet, and an unforgettable cautionary tale that, for a moment, made all of Brooklyn laugh and cringe, sometimes both at once.